Okay, so where we left off last time was Alexander's having this conversation with Carl. Carl has asked her about her father. Um, Alexandra's father seems to be sick, and remember, we're kind of coming off email having lost the cat, and we're trying to get the cat back because the cat climbed up into a place where they couldn't reach. So let's get right back into the story. When she looked for Emil, she found him sitting on a step of the staircase that led up to the clothing and carpet department. He was playing with a little bohemian girl, Mary Tavesky, who was tying her handkerchief over the kitten's head for a bonnet. Marie was a stranger in the country, having come from Omaha with her mother to visit her uncle Joe Tavesky. She was a dark child with brown curly hair like a brunette doll's, a coaxing little red mouth and round yellow-brown eyes. Everyone noticed her eyes. The brown iris had golden glints that made them look like gold stone, or, in softer lights, like that Colorado mineral called tiger eye. The country children thereabouts wore their dresses to their shoe tops, but this city child was dressed in what was then called the Kate Greenaway manner, and her red cashmere frock, gathered full from the yoke, came almost to the floor. This, with her poke bonnet, gave her the look of a quaint little woman. She had a white fur tippet about her neck and made no fussy objections when Emil fingered it admiringly. Jesus. Alexandra had not the heart to take him away from so pretty a playfellow, and she let them tease the kitten altogether until Joe Tavesky came in noisily and picked up his little niece, setting her on his shoulder for everyone to see. His children were all boys, and he adored this little creature. His cronies formed a circle around him, admiring and teasing the little girl, who took their jokes with great good nature. They were all delighted with her, for they seldom saw so pretty and carefully nurtured a child. They told her that she must choose one of them for a sweetheart, and each began pressing his suit and offering her bribes, candy and little pigs and spotted calves. She looked archly into the big brown mustache faces smelling of spirits and tobacco. Then she ran her tiny forefinger delicately over Joe's bristly chin and said, "Here is my sweetheart." The Bohemians roared with laughter, and Marie's uncle hugged her until she cried, "Please don't, Uncle Joe, you hurt me." Each of Joe's friends gave her a bag of candy, and she kissed them all around, though she did not like the country candy very well. Perhaps that was why she bethought herself of Emil. "Let me down, Uncle Joe," she said. "I want to give some of my candy to that nice little boy I found." She walked graciously over to Emil, followed by her lusty admirers, who formed a new circle and teased the little boy until he hid his face in his sister's skirts, and she had to scold him for being such a baby. Okay, a little bit of a toxic behavior going on here, but, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever. I'd say unfortunately, though. Let's just say unfortunately. Sometimes things like this would happen to young women. Yeah, not fortunately. But we're starting to see that Emil is kind of in this place where he's developing feelings for ladies, so he's of that age, right? And he's going through an embarrassing moment, right? Like, that's a little sad, but he's trying to confide in his sister by hugging her in some ways and grasping her to really, he's getting over a little bit of embarrassment, so we need to be kind of understanding of Emil, right, in this moment. Let's continue. All right. The farm people were making preparations to start for home. The women were checking over their groceries and pinning their big red shawls about their heads. The men were buying tobacco and candy with what money they had left. Were showing each other new boots and gloves and blue flannel shirts. I have to repeat that sentence. It's always very important as you move through a sentence, and this is just unsolicited advice, to really notice and take into account all of the commas that are there, your reading experience will become better. And I think that you start to develop even more of an understanding on how to vividly express the feelings that you want to somebody else. I think authors are more conscious of where they put different types of abbreviations and punctuation, right? It's very important to kind of notice these things because they help you build this sense of empathy for what the author is trying to do, right? They're trying to communicate and evoke an emotion to you in some ways. Even if you don't think about it, the pauses are very deliberate. They've thought through these things, they put them down on paper for a reason. And in that way, if you can understand the pacing, right? You understand where commas are, you understand where the pauses are, you start to build up this mental model, or like this kind of dictionary of how other people speak. You learn to slow down and to listen, right? You're listening, you're reading, but you're also kind of taking it in at the same time, right? So extremely important. Like, if a sentence doesn't make sense after you've read it all the way through, then maybe you read that sentence a little too fast, right? You've blown through it. So just be aware. And there's nothing wrong with slowing down. You don't need to blow through a page. It's not a race. I guarantee you there's somebody out there who's probably already read this book, so you're not going to beat them. You remember you're doing this. Got to remind yourself what you're doing this for. Sometimes it's for peace. Sometimes it's to take yourself out of the world that you're in and put yourself in another world. These are my television shows some way. I have an imagination that I think kind of runs rampant. So books are a way for me to learn about how other people speak. They're my way of learning, of creating new stories that I might see differently than I would on a television. I love visual art, I love TV shows, but this is a different way, right? I might go on these little rants a little bit as we move through these videos, but it's all because I want to emphasize that there is something more important happening when you're reading than just consuming the words on the page. You're building up an entire set of things that you're not thinking about. And most people don't ever think to emphasize what reading does, right? It's not I think as we move into this world where everything needs to be an optimization, and reading becomes this thing that's like very not a lot of people do it, right? So it's not like popular, so it's like very niche. It's for everyone, and it should be seen as such a thing. It is a skill, but also a tool and an outlet for you to go and learn for the sake of learning, not to optimize your brain, but to put your brain at peace. That's really what it should be about. There should be that should be a part of it. So that's my spiel for today. I've got about 6 minutes left, so take what I said with a grain of salt. I'll continue to break and pause as we continue to read this. I don't care how long it takes me to get through this. I want the passion, I want to emphasize the importance that this will bring to different people in different ways, reading itself. Okay, so let's pick up from here. Yeah, there we go, there. The farm people were making preparations to start for home. The women were checking over their groceries and pinning their big red shawls about their heads. The men were buying tobacco and candy with what money they had left, were showing each other new boots and gloves and blue flannel shirts. Three big bohemians were drinking raw alcohol, tinctured, tinctured with oil of cinnamon. This was said to fortify one effectually against the cold, and they smacked their lips after each pull at the flask. Their volubility drowned every other noise in the place, and the overheated store sounded of their spirited language as it reeked of pipe smoke, damp woolens, and kerosene. Another big lesson here that I will continuously emphasize is this is a really cool tool. It's built into your iPhone, and I think it's awesome. If I don't know the definition of a word, use the dictionary. Like, just look it up. I mean, you learn new words as you go, but it's also good to understand the pronunciation. So tincture, solution, trace, a medicine made by dissolving a drug in alcohol, a slight trace of something. Okay. This makes sense. Tinctured with oil of cinnamon, so it's like this makes a lot of sense, right? So I learned a new word today. And that's kind of how simple it can be. If you like using like a paperback dictionary, a Webster's dictionary, take the time to just look up the word. There's nothing wrong with that. Slow down. Remember, slow down. It's important. It's very, very important. I'm already feeling very relaxed just by reading to you right now and thinking about how I feel. I don't feel as stressed. Sometimes I feel so stressed. I feel all of my, this is very strange to say, but I feel all of my nasal congestion just kind of releasing, talking about how to slow up in reading. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, that's cool. All right, so we're back in this moment, right? We're back in the story, and it seems like a lot of grown men are imbibing and also kind of participating in vices. So like smoking, doing all of the things that a group of men might do around that time, right? Farm people. Okay, so from here. Carl came in wearing his overcoat and carrying a wooden box with a brass handle. "Come," he said. "I fed and watered your team, and the wagon is ready." He carried Emil out and tucked him down in the straw in the wagon box. The heat had made the little boy sleepy, but he still clung to his kitten. "You were awful good to climb so high and get my kitten, Carl. When I get big, I'll climb and get little boys' kittens for them," he murmured drowsily. Before the horses were over the first hill, Emil and his cat were both fast asleep. Although it was only 4 o'clock, the winter day was fading. The road led southwest toward the streak of pale, watery light that glimmered in the leaden sky. Let's take a look. Leaden sky, English. Look up. Dull, sluggish. Dull, heavy, or slow. Okay. Makes sense. The light fell upon the two sad young faces that were turned mutely toward it, upon the eyes of the girl who seemed to be looking with such anguished perplexity into the future. Anguished perplexity there meaning, let's look this. I know what this means. Agonized, right? There's a lot of pain. Sometimes looking forward into the future, right, can be very difficult. It's very heavy. That's why I believe, because there's so many things thrown at us nowadays, right? Lots to consume, lots to take in. Looking into the future just seems very overwhelming. It makes you get sweaty and things like that, and anxious. So that's kind of how she's feeling right now, looking into the future, right? Upon the somber eyes of the boy who seemed already to be looking into the past, the little town behind them had vanished as if it had never been, had fallen behind the swell of the prairie, and the stern frozen country received them into its bosom. The homesteads were few and far apart, here and there a windmill gaunt against the sky, a sod house crouching in a hollow. But the great fact was the land itself, which seemed to overwhelm the little beginnings of the human society that struggled in its somber wastes. It was from facing this vast hardness that the boy's mouth had become so bitter, because he felt that men were too weak to make any mark here, that the land wanted to be let alone, to preserve its own fierce strength, its peculiar, savage kind of beauty, its uninterrupted mournfulness. So the author is making us aware that the characters in the story they're looking at man in this way, right? That we're starting to get a sense that the author is aware that what man has done by setting up this town, by trying to continuously make progress, right? Farming, right? This is like part of the theme of the story here, is that through this process of trying to be better, we have kind of, unfortunately, disrupted the natural world, as it were, right? And there's questions of whether or not we should have done that in the first place. That's kind of what this paragraph right here that we end on is making me feel. That the world is kind of telling us, maybe just leave me alone, you know? So we're getting a little somber. It's a little sad, right? A very desolate kind of town. People are poor, and everything is kind of a struggle right now. So I'm going to end on that. We'll get into, we'll keep on moving and trucking along through this. Until next time.